The dusty streets of Evanston, Wyoming blazed under the unforgiving sun of August 1882, and Emmett Quincy had just finished loading his saddlebags when he heard the desperate voice that would change his life forever. The woman stood outside the general store, her cotton dress faded from too many washings, her dark hair falling loose from its pins as she clutched the door frame. Her face was pale despite the heat, and her voice cracked with exhaustion as she pleaded with the storekeeper who stood in the doorway with his arms crossed. "Please, Mr. Henderson, my daughter cannot breathe properly. The fever has taken hold and the doctor said she needs that medicine. I will pay you as soon as my husband's wages come through from the railroad. No credit, Mrs. Oliver. That is my policy and always has been." The storekeeper's voice was firm, unyielding as iron. Emmett tied his horse to the hitching post and moved closer, the jingle of his spurs the only sound besides the woman's ragged breathing. She looked ready to collapse right there on the wooden boardwalk, her hands trembling as she tried once more. "Sir, she is only 6 years old. Please, I am begging you." The storekeeper shook his head and retreated into his store, closing the door with a definitive thud. The woman sagged against the post, her eyes squeezed shut as tears traced clean lines down her dusty cheeks. Emmett stepped forward, removing his hat. "Madam, I could not help but overhear. What medicine does your daughter need?" The woman's eyes flew open, revealing irises the color of spring violets, startling against her exhaustion. She looked at him with a mixture of hope and suspicion, as any sensible woman would when approached by a stranger. Emmett was tall and broad-shouldered, his face weathered from years riding the range, but his brown eyes were kind. My daughter Victoria needs medicine for her fever and her breathing. The doctor said it is called laudanum and something else for the fever, but Her voice broke. "I do not have the money today. How much does it cost?" $3.50. The amount seemed to cause her physical pain to say aloud. Emmett reached into his vest pocket and pulled out several bills. "I will get it. You go home and rest." The woman stared at him as if he had spoken in a foreign language. What? Your daughter needs you and you look like you are about to fall over. Go home and rest. I will bring the medicine to you." He spoke gently but firmly, the way he might calm a skittish horse. "I cannot accept charity from a stranger." Her pride stiffened her spine even as her body swayed with fatigue. "Then consider it a loan. You can pay me back when your husband's wages come through." Emmett placed his hat back on his head and moved toward the store entrance. "Where do you live?" The small yellow house past the church on the north side. "But sir, I do not even know your name." "Emmett Quincy, madam, and yours?" "Vivian Oliver." She pronounced her name carefully, as if testing whether he was trustworthy enough to have it. "Well, Mrs. Oliver, you best get home to your daughter. I will be along shortly with that medicine." He tipped his hat and entered the store before she could protest further. Through the dusty window, he watched her stand there for a long moment before she finally turned and made her way down the street, her gait unsteady but determined. Something about the fierce love in her voice when she spoke of her daughter had struck a chord deep in his chest. Inside the store, Mr. Henderson looked up from his ledger with barely concealed annoyance. "If you are here to plead that woman's case, save your breath. I am here to buy medicine. $3.50 worth, I believe." Emmett placed $4 on the counter. "Laudanum and fever medicine for a child." The storekeeper's expression shifted immediately to one of commercial interest. "Right away, sir. How old is the child?" 6, I am told." Henderson gathered the bottles from the shelf behind him, wrapping them carefully in brown paper. "The laudanum should be given in very small doses, just a few drops in water. The fever powder should be mixed with cool water and given every 4 hours." Emmett took the package and pocketed his change. "Much obliged. That woman, Mrs. Oliver, she has been in here 3 times today. I run a business, not a charity." Henderson's tone was defensive. "I am sure you do what you think is right." Emmett's response was neutral, but his jaw was tight as he left the store. He untied his horse, a sturdy bay mare named Copper, and led her through the streets of Evanston. The town was growing rapidly thanks to the Union Pacific Railroad, with new buildings going up every month. Emmett had been passing through on his way to a ranch job further north, but something told him his plans had just changed. The yellow house was easy to find, small but well kept despite its faded paint. A tiny garden struggled against the dry soil in front, and lace curtains hung in the windows. Emmett tied Copper to the fence post and approached the door, knocking gently. Vivian answered almost immediately, as if she had been watching for him. Her hair was still loose around her shoulders, and up close, he could see she was younger than he had first thought. Perhaps 25 or 26, with fine features that would have been beautiful if not etched with worry. "You actually came." Her voice held wonder. "I said I would." He held out the package. "The storekeeper said to give the laudanum in drops, just a few in water. The fever powder should be mixed with cool water every 4 hours. She took the package with trembling hands. "I do not know how to thank you, Mr. Quincy. You have saved my daughter's life. Let us hope that is true. May I see her? I have some experience with fevers." This was not entirely accurate, but Emmett found himself reluctant to leave. Vivian hesitated, then stepped back to let him in. "She is in the bedroom. Please come in." The house was sparse but clean, with handmade curtains and a few pieces of simple furniture. Everything spoke of people who had little but took pride in what they had. He followed Vivian through the main room to a small bedroom where a tiny girl lay on a narrow bed, her face flushed with fever, her breathing rapid and shallow. "Victoria, my sweet girl, the medicine is here." Vivian's voice transformed when she spoke to her daughter, becoming soft and musical despite her fear. The child's eyes fluttered open, glassy with fever. "Mama!" "Yes, my darling, we are going to make you feel better now." Vivian looked at Emmett. "There is a cup on the table. Could you bring me some water from the pitcher?" He did as she asked, watching as she carefully measured the drops of laudanum and mixed the fever powder. Her hands were steadier now, with purpose and hope driving away some of the desperation. She lifted her daughter's head gently and helped her drink. "There now. You are going to feel so much better soon." Vivian smoothed the damp hair from Victoria's forehead with infinite tenderness. "Who is that man, Mama?" The girl's voice was weak but curious. "That is Mr. Quincy. He is a very kind person who helped us get your medicine." "Thank you, Mr. Quincy," the child whispered before her eyes closed again. Emmett felt something catch in his throat. "You are welcome, little miss." Vivian adjusted the thin blanket over her daughter and stood, motioning for Emmett to follow her back to the main room. Once there, she sagged into a chair as if her strings had been cut. "When did she take ill?" Emmett asked, remaining standing near the door. 3 days ago." "At first, I thought it was just a summer cold, but then the fever came and her breathing became labored. The doctor came yesterday and said it was settled in her chest." Vivian's hands twisted in her lap. "My husband works for the railroad. He is part of a crew that is laying tracks 60 miles north of here. They are gone for weeks at a time. His wages are good, but they do not pay until the end of the month, and I spent what we had on the doctor's visit." "You have no family here to help?" "No. We came from Ohio 2 years ago, seeking a better life. My parents passed from influenza and my husband's family disowned him when he married me." There was old pain in her voice, but also strength. "We have made it work, just the 3 of us. You should rest too. You look exhausted." "I cannot. I need to watch her, change the cool cloths on her forehead, give her the medicine every few hours. Even as she spoke, Vivian's eyes were drooping. Emmett made a decision that surprised him. When did you last sleep? 2 nights ago, I think, maybe 3. She pressed her hands to her face. I lose track. Right. You are going to lie down for a few hours. I will watch your daughter and make sure she gets her medicine. Vivian's head snapped up. I cannot ask you to do that. You are a stranger. You are not asking, I am offering, and I will not leave until you rest. He crossed his arms, his stance making it clear he would not be moved. Why are you being so kind to us? Her violet eyes searched his face, looking for some hidden motive. Emmett considered the question. Why was he doing this? He had places to be, a job waiting for him. But when he looked at this woman who was willing to beg for her child's life, who stood tall despite having nothing, he knew he could not walk away. My mother died when I was young. My father raised me and my sister alone. I remember what it was like when she got sick, how scared we all were. A neighbor woman stayed up with her for 3 nights so my father could rest. He cleared his throat. I am just paying forward an old kindness. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. Did your sister recover? She did. She is married now, living in California with her husband and 3 children. He smiled slightly. She is stubborn as a mule, so illness never stood much of a chance against her. A ghost of a smile touched Vivian's lips. Thank you, Mr. Quincy, truly, if you are certain. I am. Now go rest. I will wake you if anything changes. She rose slowly and moved to a door on the opposite side of the main room. There are clean cloths in the basin. The water should still be cool. Just lay them on her forehead and change them when they get warm. The medicine is due in about 3 hours. I understand. Go on now. Vivian disappeared into her room and Emmett heard the creak of bed springs. He stood for a moment in the quiet house, wondering what he had gotten himself into. Then he went to check on the child. Victoria was breathing a bit easier already, the medicine starting to do its work. Her fever was still high, but not as alarming as before. Emmett settled into the chair beside the bed, wrung out a cloth in the cool water, and placed it gently on her small forehead. The afternoon sun slanted through the window, casting golden light across the worn floorboards. Emmett found himself studying the little room. There was a rag doll on a shelf, carefully mended. A few books, their spines worn from reading. A small wooden horse that someone had carved with care. Everything spoke of love despite poverty. He thought about his own life. At 32, he had been drifting from ranch to ranch for years. Good with horses and cattle, never staying anywhere long enough to put down roots. After his father died 5 years ago, he had sold the family farm and split the money with his sister. Since then, he had been searching for something without knowing what it was. Maybe it was this. Maybe it was the chance to matter to someone. The child stirred, and Emmett changed the cloth on her forehead, his large, calloused hands surprisingly gentle. He had helped birth calves and foals, had nursed sick animals back to health. A child was not so different, he supposed. They needed care and patience and someone to watch over them. Time passed slowly. He heard Vivian's soft snoring from the other room and was glad she was finally resting. Through the window, he watched the town go about its business. A freight wagon rumbled past. Children played in the dusty street. The church bell rang the hour. When 3 hours had passed, he carefully measured out the medicine as Vivian had done and woke the child gently. Victoria, you need to take your medicine now. The girl opened her eyes, looking at him with confusion before memory returned. Oh, you are the kind man. That is right. Can you sit up a little and drink this for me? She did, obediently swallowing the medicine despite its bitter taste. Will I get better now? I believe you will. The medicine is already helping. Are you a friend of my mama's? I suppose I am becoming one. She needs more friends. She is sad sometimes when Papa is gone. The child's honesty was disarming. Well then, I am glad to be her friend. Emmett helped her lie back down and replace the cool cloth. Will you stay until she wakes up? I do not like it when she is sad. I will stay as long as I am needed. Even as he said it, Emmett realized he meant it. The child smiled and closed her eyes again. Her breathing was definitely easier now, and her color was better. The crisis was passing. Emmett remained in the chair as the afternoon wore into evening. He heard Vivian rise once and knew she was checking on them, saw her shadow in the doorway. But she did not enter, and after a moment she returned to her rest. It was nearly dark when Victoria's fever finally broke. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and when Emmett felt her skin, it was cooler than it had been in hours. He removed the cloth and just watched her breathe, steady and deep. The sound of it was like music. Vivian appeared in the doorway, her hair still loose, her eyes clearer than before. How is she? The fever broke about 10 minutes ago. She has been breathing easier all afternoon. Vivian moved to the bed and placed her own hand on her daughter's forehead, and the relief that washed over her face was almost painful to witness. She closed her eyes and whispered something that might have been a prayer. "Thank you," she said when she opened her eyes again. "Thank you for everything, for the medicine, for staying, for letting me rest. I do not know what I would have done without you. You would have found a way. You are a strong woman." Emmett stood, suddenly aware of the intimacy of the situation, alone with this woman in the growing darkness. "I should light some lamps. Are you hungry? I do not have much, but I could make some supper." "I do not want to impose further. Mr. Quincy, you have spent the entire afternoon watching my daughter. The least I can do is feed you." There was a firmness in her voice that brooked no argument. They moved back to the main room, and Vivian lit 2 oil lamps while Emmett stirred the fire in the small stove. She pulled out flour and lard and began making biscuits while beans heated in a pot. Her movements were efficient, practiced, the work of someone who had learned to make much from little. "You said you were passing through Evanston," she asked as she worked. "I was headed to a ranch job up north. Good pay, steady work through the winter." "Was? You speak as if that has changed." Emmett considered his words carefully. "I find myself thinking I might stay in Evanston for a while. See what opportunities there are here." Vivian turned to look at him, her hands dusted with flour. "Because of us. Because sometimes a man knows when he is supposed to be somewhere, and I think I am supposed to be here right now." He met her eyes and something passed between them, an understanding that went beyond words. She turned back to her biscuits, but he saw the slight smile on her lips. "The railroad is always hiring. My husband could put in a word for you when he returns. When is that expected to be?" "Another week, perhaps 2. The work depends on weather and terrain." They ate together at her small table, the food simple but good. Victoria woke once and managed to eat a few bites before falling back into a healthy sleep. The worry that had lined Vivian's face all day was finally easing. "Tell me about yourself, Mr. Quincy. Where are you from originally?" Vivian asked as she cleared their plates. "Please call me Emmett. Mr. Quincy was my father." He helped her carry dishes to the basin. "I grew up in Missouri on a farm. It was not much, but it was home. After my mother died, my father did his best to raise us right. Taught me to work hard, treat people fair, and always help someone in need. He sounds like a good man." "He was. Died 5 years back. His heart just gave out one day while he was working in the field. At least it was quick." Emmett dried a dish with a cloth. "What about you? You said you came from Ohio." "Yes, from a small town outside Cincinnati. My father was a school teacher, my mother a seamstress. They had dreams of me marrying well, but I fell in love with a railroad man instead." Her smile was bittersweet. "They were so angry when we eloped, said I was throwing my life away on a man with no prospects. But Thomas is good to me and he adores Victoria. We may not have much, but we have love. That is more than many people have. I like to think so. She hung the dishcloth to dry. I should check on Victoria once more before I sleep. You must be exhausted yourself. I will find a room at the boarding house. Nonsense. You will sleep here. It is not much, but I have a bedroll you can use. After everything you have done today, I will not have you paying for a room. Her tone left no room for argument. Emmett found himself agreeing. Vivian brought out a bedroll and some blankets, setting them up in the corner of the main room. It was not the first time he had slept on a floor, and it would not be the last. "Good night, Emmett," Vivian said softly. "And thank you again. You are truly an answer to prayer." "Good night, Vivian. Sleep well." He lay on the bedroll, listening to the sounds of the house settling around him. Through the thin walls he could hear Vivian moving about, checking on Victoria one last time. Then silence, blessed and complete. Emmett stared at the dark ceiling and wondered what he was doing. He had known this woman for less than a day. She was married, had a child, had a whole life that did not include him. And yet he could not shake the feeling that his life had just taken a turn toward something meaningful. He thought of her violet eyes, her fierce love for her daughter, the way she held her head high even when begging for help. There was something extraordinary about Vivian Oliver, something that called to the lonely places in his heart. But she was married. That fact was immutable, unchangeable. Whatever he was feeling, it could not be acted upon. The most he could hope for was friendship, and even that would have to be carefully managed. He fell asleep with these thoughts chasing through his mind. The last image before darkness took him being Vivian's smile when he told her he was staying in Evanston. Morning came with golden light streaming through the windows. Emmett woke to the smell of coffee and frying bacon, luxuries he had not expected. He rolled up his bedding and found Vivian already dressed, her hair pinned up neatly, moving about the small kitchen with energy she had not possessed the day before. "Good morning. I hope you slept well." She poured coffee into a tin cup and handed it to him. "Very well, thank you." "How is Victoria?" "Still sleeping, but her breathing is clear and the fever has not returned. I think the worst has passed." The relief in her voice was profound. They ate breakfast together, and it felt strangely domestic, strangely right. Emmett told himself he was being foolish, but he could not help enjoying the moment. "I should go into town today, see about finding work," he said as he finished his coffee. "The railroad office is near the station. Ask for Mr. Peterson. Tell him you are a friend of the Oliver family." "I will do that." He stood, reluctant to leave. "Will you be all right today?" "Yes, Victoria is much better and I am well rested thanks to you. We will be fine." She walked him to the door. "Will you come by later?" "I would like to pay you back for the medicine as soon as Thomas's wages come through, and I need to know where to find you." "I will come by this evening if that is acceptable." "It is very acceptable." Her smile did strange things to his heart. Emmett collected copper from where she had been patiently waiting and rode into the main part of town. Evanston was bustling with activity, the railroad bringing constant flow of people and commerce. He found the railroad office easily enough and went inside. Mr. Peterson was a balding man with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "What can I do for you?" "I am looking for work. I am a friend of the Oliver family. Vivian Oliver suggested I speak with you." Peterson's expression softened slightly. "How is Mrs. Oliver?" "I heard her daughter was quite ill." "She is recovering well. I am Emmett Quincy and I have experience with horses and heavy labor. I am a hard worker and I am looking to stay in Evanston for a while." "Can you handle a team?" "Yes, sir. I have been working with horses my whole life." Peterson studied him for a long moment. "We need teamsters to haul supplies up to the work camps. The pay is $1.50 a day, 6 days a week. You provide your own horse and gear. Interested? Very interested. Good. You start tomorrow. Be here at dawn. Peterson made a note in his ledger. Oliver is a good man. Has a hard time of it sometimes, being away from his family so much, but the work pays well and he never complains. If you are a friend of his, that speaks well of you. Thank you, sir. I will be here at dawn. Emmett left the office feeling satisfied. Good wages, steady work, and a reason to stay in Evanston. He spent the rest of the day getting situated, finding a room at a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Fletcher, and buying a few supplies. As evening approached, he found himself riding back to the yellow house with a bag of groceries. It was not much, just some fresh eggs, milk, butter, and a few apples, but he hoped Vivian would accept them. She opened the door with Victoria on her hip, the child looking much healthier, her eyes bright and curious. "Emmett, I was hoping you would come. I brought a few things. I hope you do not mind." He held up the bag. "Mind? Emmett, you do not have to keep helping us." But her eyes lingered on the food with unmistakable hunger. "I know I do not have to. I want to. Please accept them." She did, inviting him inside. Victoria was delighted to see him, chattering away about feeling better and wanting to go outside to play. The transformation in the child was remarkable. "The doctor came by this afternoon," Vivian said as she put the groceries away. "He said whatever medicine she got worked perfectly. He seemed surprised when I told him where I had gotten it, since Mr. Henderson had refused me. He said he is going to have words with the storekeeper about refusing medicine to sick children. Good. Henderson should have helped you from the start. Well, it all worked out in the end, thanks to you." She put an apple in Victoria's hands and the child bit into it with relish. "Did you find work?" "I did. I start tomorrow at the railroad as a teamster." "Oh, that is wonderful. Thomas will be so pleased to know you will be around. He worries about leaving us alone so much." Something in the way she said it made Emmett look at her more closely. "Has something happened to make him worry more than usual?" Vivian hesitated, then sighed. "There was an incident a few months ago. Some men came through town, rough types. They bothered me when I was walking home from the market. Thomas heard about it and has been anxious ever since." Anger flared hot in Emmett's chest. "Were you hurt?" "No, some other men intervened, but it frightened me. This is still wild country in many ways, and a woman alone is vulnerable. You are not alone anymore. I am here now, and I will make sure you and Victoria are safe." The words came out fierce, protective, and he meant every syllable. Vivian looked at him with something in her eyes that made his breath catch. Gratitude, yes, but something more. Something that made him remember she was married, that this path could lead nowhere good. "You are a good man, Emmett Quincy," she said softly. "I try to be." They spent the evening together, Victoria playing with her doll while the adults talked. Emmett learned that Vivian loved to read but rarely had money for books, that she had been a teacher before Victoria was born, that she missed the green hills of Ohio but loved the wide open spaces of Wyoming, that she sang in the church choir and grew herbs in her garden for cooking and healing. He told her about his travels, the ranches he had worked, the people he had met, about his sister's letters full of news about her growing family, about the restlessness that had driven him from place to place, looking for something he could not name. "Maybe you were looking for a home," Vivian suggested. "Not a place, but a feeling. Somewhere you belonged. Maybe so." He watched her in the lamplight, the way shadows played across her face, and thought perhaps he had found it. It was late when he finally left, and as he rode back to his boarding house, he felt the weight of what was happening. He was falling for a married woman. It was wrong, impossible, doomed to bring nothing but pain. And yet he could not stop himself from looking forward to seeing her again. The days fell into a pattern. Emmett worked hard for the railroad, hauling supplies up to the work camps and bringing back equipment that needed repair. The work was grueling, the days long, but he did not mind. It felt good to be useful, to have a purpose beyond drifting. Every evening, he would stop by the yellow house. Sometimes he brought food or small gifts for Victoria. Always he stayed for supper, helping with chores, fixing things that needed repair. He mended the front step, patched a leak in the roof, built new shelves for Vivian's kitchen. She protested at first, saying he was doing too much. But he could see she was grateful for the help, and more than that, for the company. She was lonely with her husband gone so much, isolated in a town where she had few friends. "People judge me sometimes," she confided one evening as they sat on the front porch after Victoria had gone to bed. "They see a woman alone and think the worst. Or they think I am foolish for marrying a railroad man, for choosing this hard life. Then they are fools themselves. You are one of the strongest people I have ever met. I do not feel strong. Most days I feel like I am barely holding everything together. That is what strength is, holding on when everything is falling apart." She looked at him in the growing darkness, and he saw tears glimmer in her eyes. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" "I do not. I just tell you the truth as I see it." The weeks passed. Victoria grew healthier, blooming under her mother's care and the good food Emmett provided. Vivian seemed lighter somehow, as if some burden had been lifted from her shoulders, and Emmett found himself happier than he had been in years. But underneath, the contentment ran a current of guilt and longing. He was falling deeper in love with Vivian with each passing day, and he could see that she cared for him too. Nothing improper had happened between them, but the emotional intimacy was undeniable. He told himself it was friendship, that he was just helping a family in need. But late at night, lying in his room at the boarding house, he could not deny the truth. He loved her. He loved her laugh, her strength, her kindness. He loved the way she sang to Victoria, the way she tended her struggling garden, the way she looked at him when she thought he was not watching. And she was married. The fact haunted him like a ghost. It was late September when everything changed. Emmett was returning from a run to the work camp when he encountered a group of railroad workers heading back to town. Among them was Thomas Oliver. Emmett recognized him from Vivian's description. A tall, thin man with sandy hair and a beard, dusty from weeks on the rail line. He looked exhausted but pleased to be heading home. "Are you heading to Evanston?" Emmett asked, pulling up alongside them. "We are. Finally got our rotation break." Thomas smiled. "Been 2 months since I have seen my wife and daughter. I cannot wait to hold them again." Something heavy settled in Emmett's chest. This was Vivian's husband, the man she had chosen, the father of her child, the man who had every right to her love and loyalty. "I am headed that way myself. I will ride with you if you do not mind the company. Always happy for company." "I am Thomas Oliver, by the way. You work for the railroad, Emmett Quincy. I have been hauling supplies. Actually, I know your wife. I helped her when Victoria was sick a few weeks back." Thomas's face lit up. "You are the man who bought the medicine. Vivian wrote me about you. She said you were a godsend, that you may have saved Victoria's life." He reached over and gripped Emmett's shoulder. "Thank you. Thank you for being there when I could not be. It has been eating at me, being away when my family needed me. Any decent person would have done the same." "No, not everyone would have. Vivian said you stayed with Victoria so she could rest, that you have been helping them ever since. That is more than just being decent. That is being a true friend." Thomas's gratitude was genuine and complete, which only made Emmett feel worse. They rode together into Evanston, and Emmett had to watch as Thomas ran to his yellow house and swept Vivian up in his arms. Had to see the joy on her face, the tears on her cheeks, the way she clung to him. had to watch Victoria squeal with delight and launch herself at her father. It was a knife to his heart. He turned Copper away before they could see him and rode to the boarding house. He would not intrude on their reunion. This was their family, their life. He had no place in it. That night, Emmett seriously considered leaving Evanston. He could take that ranch job up north or head to California to visit his sister. Anywhere but here, watching the woman he loved with another man, but he had given his word to the railroad. He had obligations, and more than that, he could not bring himself to leave. Even if he could not have Vivian the way he wanted, he could still be her friend. He could still make sure she and Victoria were safe and cared for. It was both the most selfless and the most selfish decision of his life. The next day, Thomas came to find him at the railroad yard. "Emmett, I wanted to thank you properly. Vivian told me everything you have done for us. The medicine, the repairs to the house, the food you brought, keeping her company while I was gone. I am in your debt." "There is no debt between friends," Emmett said, though the words felt like broken glass in his mouth. "I insist you come to supper tonight. Vivian is making a special meal and we want you there. Please, it would mean a lot to both of us." Emmett wanted to refuse, but Thomas's open, honest face made it impossible. This was a good man, a man who loved his family and worked hard to provide for them. Emmett had no right to come between them. I would be honored. That evening was one of the hardest of Emmett's life. He sat at their table, eating Vivian's excellent cooking, watching the family together. Thomas was attentive to Vivian, clearly adoring her. He played with Victoria, making her giggle with delight. The love between them was evident and real. And yet, when Vivian looked at Emmett, there was something in her eyes that had not been there when she looked at her husband. Something conflicted and painful. After supper, while Thomas put Victoria to bed, Vivian walked Emmett outside. They stood in the cool September air, the stars brilliant overhead. "I have missed you," she said quietly. "These past 2 days I have missed our talks. Vivian, you should not say such things. Thomas is a good man, he loves you. I know he does, and I love him, I do." But her voice cracked on the words. "But these weeks with you, Emmett, I have felt something I thought I had lost. I have felt seen, truly seen, in a way I have not felt in years." "Stop, please stop." Emmett stepped back. "You are married. You have a child. Whatever you are feeling, whatever I am feeling, it does not matter. It cannot matter." "What are you feeling?" She looked up at him, her violet eyes full of tears and hope and fear. He could have lied, should have lied, but he had never been good at dishonesty. "I love you. God help me, I love you more than I have ever loved anyone. And that is why I have to stay away. Because you are married, and I will not be the man who destroys a family." Vivian pressed her hand to her mouth, stifling a sob. "I love you too. I have tried not to. I have told myself it is wrong, but I cannot help it. When I am with you, I feel alive in a way I have not felt since before I was married." "Was your marriage unhappy before I came along?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Not unhappy. Thomas is kind and good. But we married so young and so quickly. I was 18, he was 20. We barely knew each other. My parents forbade it, so we ran away together, and then Victoria came along, and we have been struggling ever since. We love each other, but sometimes I wonder if we are in love or if we just have gotten used to each other. That does not matter. You made vows. You have a child together. I will not ask you to break your family apart. I am not asking you to." Tears ran down her face. "I am just telling you the truth. I love you, Emmett Quincy. I love you, and it is tearing me apart because I do not know what to do." Emmett wanted to hold her, to kiss away her tears, to tell her they would find a way, but he could not. He would not. "You do what is right. You stay with your husband and your daughter. You build the life you chose, and I will stay away because that is the only honorable thing I can do." Please, do not disappear from our lives completely. Victoria adores you. Thomas considers you a friend, and She could not finish. I will not disappear, but things have to change between us. We cannot have these late evening talks, these quiet moments alone. It is not right, and it will only lead to more pain. I know you are right, but it hurts so much. I know, it hurts me too. He left her there in the moonlight, crying softly, and rode back to town with his heart in pieces. He had done the right thing, the honorable thing. So why did it feel like he was dying inside? The next weeks were agony. Emmett kept his distance from the Oliver family, visiting only occasionally and always when Thomas was home. He was cordial but cool, keeping emotional distance even as it killed him. Vivian understood. He could see it in her eyes, the pain that matched his own. But she played her part too, acting as the grateful friend rather than the woman in love with someone she could not have. Thomas noticed nothing, too caught up in his own relief at being home and his gratitude to Emmett for helping his family. He talked often about how lucky they were to have such a good friend. Each word was a fresh wound. October turned to November, and the weather grew cold. Thomas prepared to head back to the work camps, his rotation at home ending far too soon. The night before he left, he asked Emmett to come by the house. "I have a favor to ask," Thomas said when Emmett arrived. They sat alone in the main room while Vivian put Victoria to bed. "I need to know my family is safe while I am gone. Vivian told me about those men who bothered her before, and I hear there have been more rough types coming through town lately. Would you watch over them for me? Just check in occasionally, make sure they have what they need." It was the last thing Emmett wanted, but how could he refuse? "Of course. You have my word they will be safe." "Thank you, my friend. You have no idea what peace of mind that gives me." Thomas clasped his hand firmly. Vivian came out then, her face composed but her eyes red-rimmed. She had been crying, though whether over her husband's departure or the impossible situation they were all in, Emmett could not say. The next morning, Thomas left before dawn. Emmett watched from a distance as Vivian stood in her doorway, Victoria in her arms, waving goodbye. She stood there long after Thomas had disappeared from sight, her figure small and alone against the cold morning. That evening, Emmett kept his promise and stopped by the house. Vivian invited him in, but there was a formality between them now that had not been there before. "We have everything we need," she said stiffly. "Thank you for checking. If anything comes up, you know where to find me." "Yes, thank you." He should have left then. Instead, he found himself saying, "Vivian, I am sorry. I am sorry for everything, for making this harder than it has to be." Her composure cracked. "You have nothing to apologize for. You have been nothing but honorable. It is me who should be sorry for putting you in this position, for feeling things I should not feel. You cannot help what you feel any more than I can. Then what do we do? How do we live like this?" "I do not know. But we find a way because the alternative is destroying innocent people." Victoria came running into the room then, breaking the tension. "Emmett, will you play dolls with me?" He looked at Vivian, who nodded slightly. "Of course I will." He spent the next hour on the floor with the child, playing elaborate games with her dolls and the wooden horse. Victoria's innocent joy was a balm to his wounded heart. At least he could give her this, could be a positive presence in her life. When it was time for bed, Victoria hugged him tightly. "I wish you could be my papa too. Can people have two papas?" Emmett's throat closed up. "Your papa loves you very much, and I am your friend, which is a very special thing too." "I love you, Emmett. I love you too, little one." And he did. He loved this child almost as much as he loved her mother. After Victoria was tucked in, Emmett prepared to leave. Vivian walked him to the door, and for a moment they just looked at each other. "We are going to get through this," she said softly. Somehow, we will find a way to be in each other's lives without destroying everything. I hope you are right. I have to be, because losing you completely would break me. He left before he could say something he would regret, before he could do something that would ruin them all. The winter was long and hard. Emmett worked for the railroad, saved his money, and checked on Vivian and Victoria regularly. He kept his distance emotionally, but he could not abandon them entirely. Vivian needed help with heavy chores, with repairs the house needed, with the 100 small things that went wrong in daily life. Thomas came and went with his work rotation, spending 2 weeks at home for every 6 weeks away. When he was there, Emmett made himself scarce. When he was gone, Emmett was there as much as propriety allowed, always careful to maintain appropriate boundaries. It was a special kind of torture, but it was all he could have. One cold January evening, Emmett stopped by to bring some firewood he had cut. Vivian answered the door with Victoria behind her, and he could see both of them had been crying. "What is wrong?" He stepped inside immediately, concern overwhelming caution. "It is nothing, really. We are just being foolish." But Vivian's voice shook. "Tell me." Victoria spoke up, her small voice trembling. "Some boys at school said mean things about Mama. They said she is a bad woman because you come here when Papa is gone. They said their mothers said so." Rage, white and hot, flooded through Emmett. "That is absolutely untrue. Your mother is a good woman, the best I have ever known." "But why would they say it?" Victoria looked up at him with confused, hurt eyes. Emmett knelt down to her level. "Sometimes people say mean things when they do not understand. I am your mother's friend, and friends help each other. There is nothing wrong with that. The people saying otherwise are just small-minded and cruel." "But now everyone thinks badly of us," Vivian said, her voice breaking. "Mrs. Fletcher at your boarding house stopped me on the street today and told me I was setting a poor example for my daughter, that I should be ashamed of myself. She said if I had any decency, I would tell you to stay away. Mrs. Fletcher is a dried-up old busybody who has nothing better to do than spread gossip. But what if she is right? What if me seeing you, even as just a friend, is wrong? What if I am causing trouble for you, damaging your reputation? I do not give a damn about my reputation. And anyone who thinks less of you for accepting help from a friend is not worth your concern. But Victoria has to live in this town. She has to go to school with those children. I cannot let her suffer because of my choices." Vivian pressed her hands to her face. "Maybe you should stay away. Maybe everyone is right, and this friendship is inappropriate." "No." The word came out fierce. "No, I will not abandon you because small-minded people cannot understand that a man and a woman can be friends. You need help. Victoria needs a male figure in her life since her father is gone so much, and I will be damned if I let gossip drive me away." "But Emmett." "But nothing. Let them talk. We know the truth. We have done nothing wrong. Except love each other in a way we should not," a voice whispered in his mind. But he pushed it away. Vivian looked at him with such gratitude and longing that it hurt. "Thank you. Thank you for not giving up on us." "Never. I will never give up on you," but the damage was done. Over the following weeks, the gossip grew worse. Emmett found himself getting stares and whispers at work. Vivian was increasingly isolated, with many of the town women refusing to speak to her. Victoria came home from school in tears more than once. Thomas returned in late January and immediately sensed something was wrong. At first, Vivian tried to hide it from him, but eventually, the truth came out. "People think I am having an affair with Emmett," she said bluntly one evening when Emmett was there for supper. She had insisted he come, despite the gossip, despite everything. "They think we are carrying on behind your back." Thomas looked between his wife and Emmett, his expression unreadable. And are you? No. Vivian's response was immediate and forceful. Thomas, I have never been unfaithful to you. Never. Emmett has been a perfect gentleman. He has only helped us, nothing more. Then why do people think otherwise? Emmett spoke up. Because a man and a woman cannot be friends in this town without everyone assuming the worst. Because your wife was lonely and needed help and I provided it, and that was apparently scandalous. Thomas studied him for a long moment. Do you have feelings for my wife, Emmett? The question hung in the air like a blade. Emmett could lie, but Thomas deserved the truth. Yes, I do. I love her. But I have never acted on those feelings, and I never will. She is married to you, and I respect that absolutely. Vivian made a small sound of distress, but Thomas held up a hand. And you, Vivian, how do you feel about Emmett? She closed her eyes, tears leaking from beneath her lashes. I love him too. God forgive me, I do, but I have never betrayed you, Thomas, not once, not ever. The silence was deafening. Victoria, sensing the tension, had gone to her room. The three adults sat in the small house, the truth finally laid bare between them. I see, Thomas said finally. His voice was quiet, controlled. I need to think. Emmett, I am going to have to ask you to leave. Emmett stood immediately. Of course. Thomas, I am sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I know, that almost makes it worse. Thomas would not look at him. Just go, please. Emmett left, his heart in his throat. He had ruined everything. His honesty had destroyed the fragile peace they had maintained, and now who knew what would happen? He spent a sleepless night at the boarding house, ignoring Mrs. Fletcher's pointed looks and whispered comments. He had never felt more alone. The next morning, Thomas came to find him at the railroad yard. His face was haggard, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. We need to talk, Thomas said without preamble. They walked away from the other workers, finding privacy near the stacked lumber. Thomas stood with his hands in his pockets, staring at the ground. I have been doing a lot of thinking, he began. About my marriage, about my life, about what I truly want, and I have come to some difficult realizations. Emmett waited, his stomach churning. I love Vivian. I have always loved her, but the truth is, we have been drifting apart for years. I am gone more than I am home. When I am here, we go through the motions of being a married couple, but the passion, the connection we once had, it is gone. Thomas finally looked up, his eyes full of pain. I think part of me has known for a long time that we married too young, for the wrong reasons. We ran away together because it was exciting, because we wanted to rebel against her parents. And then Victoria came along, and we were trapped in a life neither of us had truly chosen. Thomas, let me finish, please. Thomas took a deep breath. I have been offered a permanent position with a crew that is pushing rail lines into Montana. Good pay, a chance for advancement. It would mean being gone for months at a time, only coming back once or twice a year. I was going to turn it down because of Vivian and Victoria, but now I am thinking I should take it. What are you saying? I am saying that I think Vivian and I need to separate. Maybe not divorce, not immediately. That is scandalous and difficult. But a separation, with the understanding that we are both free to pursue other paths. Thomas's voice was steady but sad. I want her to be happy, Emmett. She is a good woman, the mother of my child, and she deserves happiness. And I think you can give her that in a way I never could. Emmett was stunned. You are giving me permission to court your wife. I am saying that I am stepping aside. Whether you two pursue a relationship is up to you, but I will not stand in the way anymore. Thomas extended his hand. I do not hate you, Emmett. You have been honorable throughout this whole situation. You could have taken advantage, but you did not. That speaks well of your character, and if Vivian is going to be with someone else, I am glad it is a man like you. Emmett shook his hand, overwhelmed. What about Victoria? She is my daughter, and I will always be her father. I will send money for her care and I will visit when I can. But she needs stability and a real home, not a father who is gone most of the time. You can give her that." Thomas's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Take care of them, Emmett. Love them the way they deserve to be loved. Promise me that." "I promise. You have my word." Thomas nodded and walked away, his shoulders slumped with the weight of his decision. Emmett stood there for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. The impossible had become possible. The door to a future with Vivian had just opened, but it came at such a cost. A marriage ending, a family torn apart, even if it was done with the best intentions. Could happiness be built on such foundations? He had to talk to Vivian. She was hanging laundry when he arrived at the yellow house, her movements mechanical, her face pale. She looked up as he approached, fear and hope warring in her eyes. "Thomas was here," she said before he could speak. "He told me about the job in Montana, about the separation." Her hands twisted in the damp sheet she was holding. "I do not know what to say. I do not know how to feel." "How do you feel?" "Relieved, guilty, heartbroken, hopeful, everything all at once." She hung the sheet with shaking hands. "I never wanted my marriage to end. I never wanted to hurt Thomas. But I cannot deny that there is a part of me that is glad. Is that terrible?" "No, it is human." Emmett stepped closer. "Vivian, we do not have to rush into anything. You need time to process this, to figure out what you want. I will wait as long as you need." "I know what I want. I have known for months." She turned to face him fully. "I want you, Emmett. I want a life with you, but I am so afraid. Afraid of the scandal, afraid of hurting Victoria, afraid that this whole situation is built on sin and will crumble because of it." "What does Victoria know?" "Only that her father is taking a job that will keep him away for a long time. I have not told her about the separation yet. I do not know how." Vivian's voice broke. "How do you tell a child that her parents are not going to be together anymore?" "With love and honesty. And by assuring her that both her parents still love her very much, that nothing is her fault. Will you be there when I tell her? She loves you. Your presence might make it easier." "Of course. Whenever you are ready." They told Victoria that evening, sitting her down in the small main room. The child listened with wide, solemn eyes as Vivian explained that Mama and Papa were not going to live together anymore, but that it did not mean Papa did not love her. "Is it because of me?" Victoria asked, her lip trembling. "No, sweetheart, absolutely not. This has nothing to do with you. Sometimes adults realize they are better as friends than as husband and wife. But your papa will always be your papa, and he will visit when he can, and he will always love you." Vivian pulled her daughter close. "But I do not want Papa to go away." Tears streamed down Victoria's face. "I know, my darling, I know. This is hard and it is sad. But sometimes difficult things happen and we have to be brave and get through them together." Victoria turned to Emmett, her small face crumpled with grief. "Are you going away too?" "No, I am staying right here. I will always be here for you and your mama." He opened his arms and she launched herself at him, sobbing. He held her while she cried, making promises he intended to keep. He would be there. He would not leave. He would love her and protect her for as long as he lived. Eventually, Victoria cried herself to sleep in his arms. He carried her to her bed and tucked her in gently while Vivian watched from the doorway, her own face wet with tears. "Thank you," she whispered when they returned to the main room. "Thank you for being here, for helping with this impossible situation." "Where is Thomas now?" "He is staying with one of his co-workers tonight. He will leave for Montana in a few days. He said it would be easier if he just went, rather than drawing it out." Vivian sagged into a chair. "This is really happening. My marriage is ending." Emmett knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "I know this is painful. I know it feels wrong, but Thomas is right. You two have been drifting apart for years. And maybe, just maybe, this is the path to happiness for all of you. How can breaking a family apart lead to happiness? Sometimes breaking something that is not working is the only way to build something better. Your marriage was not happy, Vivian. You stayed because you felt you should, because of duty and obligation. But Thomas has given you freedom. He has given both of you freedom. What you do with it is up to you. She looked at him, her violet eyes searching his face. What do you want me to do with it? I want you to take time to heal, to figure out who you are outside of being someone's wife. And when you are ready, if you are ready, I will be here. I will court you properly. I will build a life with you if that is what you want. I already know what I want. I have known for months. But you need time anyway. You need to be sure, and Victoria needs time to adjust. We do not rush this. How did you become so wise? A small smile touched her lips. I am not wise. I am just trying to do right by the people I love. The days that followed were painful and strange. Thomas left for Montana with minimal fanfare, saying goodbye to Victoria with promises to write and visit. The separation was handled as quietly as possible, but of course, the gossip exploded anyway. Vivian was treated as a scandal, a divorced woman, though technically she was only separated. Many of the townspeople shunned her completely, but some, surprisingly, reached out with kindness. Women who had been in difficult marriages themselves, who understood that sometimes love was not enough. Emmett continued to help Vivian and Victoria, but he was careful to maintain propriety. He did not stay late into the evenings. He did not call on her daily. He gave her space to breathe and think and find her footing as a woman on her own. He also confronted Mrs. Fletcher at the boarding house when she made a snide comment about Vivian being a loose woman. Mrs. Oliver is a respectable woman who is going through a difficult time. If I hear you spreading more gossip about her, I will find other lodging and make sure everyone knows why. Mrs. Fletcher huffed but said no more, at least in his hearing. Winter turned to spring. Vivian got a job teaching at the small school, which helped with expenses and gave her a sense of purpose beyond just being a mother. Victoria adjusted to her new reality, though she still asked about her father often. Thomas sent letters and money as promised, and while he was not there in person, he kept his word to remain part of his daughter's life. And slowly, Emmett and Vivian began to build something new. He courted her properly, bringing flowers, taking her and Victoria on picnics, attending church with them. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. They dreamed together about the future. 6 months after the separation, on a warm evening in June, Emmett took Vivian for a walk while Victoria stayed with a neighbor. They strolled through the streets of Evanston, past the yellow house, to a small hill that overlooked the town. I have been thinking, Emmett said as they stood there watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. About what I want from life, about what truly matters, and I keep coming back to you. Emmett, let me say this, please. He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. I love you, Vivian. I have loved you since the day I saw you begging for medicine for your daughter. I love your strength, your kindness, your fierce devotion to those you care about. I love the way you sing when you think no one is listening and the way you make Victoria laugh. I love everything about you. Tears streamed down her face. I love you too, so much. I know we cannot marry yet, not until a proper amount of time has passed, not until the divorce is finalized, but I want you to know my intentions. I want to marry you, Vivian. I want to be your husband and Victoria's father. I want to build a life with you, a real life, full of love and laughter and everything good. Will you let me? Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes. She threw her arms around him, and for the first time he kissed her. It was soft and sweet and full of promise. It was the first kiss of many, the beginning of the life they had both been dreaming of. They were married a year later, in September of 1884. Thomas had agreed to a divorce by then, the legal proceedings made easier by his absence in Montana and his cooperation. He even sent a letter wishing them well, saying he hoped they would be happy. The wedding was small, just a few close friends and Victoria, who served as flower girl. The child was delighted to officially have Emmett as her father, having already been calling him Papa for months. Vivian wore a simple blue dress, her dark hair adorned with wildflowers. Emmett wore his best suit, his heart so full he thought it might burst. As they stood before the minister and said their vows, he knew this was what he had been searching for all those years of drifting. This was home. They moved into a larger house on the edge of town, one with room for a growing family. Emmett continued to work for the railroad, eventually becoming a supervisor. Vivian kept teaching for a while until their second child was born, a boy. They named him Ethan, and he had his mother's violet eyes and his father's steadiness. 2 years later, a daughter came along, Sarah, with her father's brown eyes and her mother's dark hair. Victoria adored her younger siblings, taking her role as big sister seriously. Thomas kept his word and remained part of Victoria's life, visiting once or twice a year when his work allowed. The relationship was cordial and friendly, with no bitterness. He had married again eventually to a woman in Montana and seemed content with his choices. Life was not perfect. There were still people in Evanston who whispered about the scandal, about the divorce and the quick remarriage. But Vivian and Emmett did not let it bother them. They had found their happiness, had built something real and lasting from the ashes of what came before. Years passed. Victoria grew into a beautiful young woman, eventually marrying a kind railroad engineer and moving to Cheyenne. Ethan became a doctor, inspired by the stories of how medicine had saved his sister's life before he was born. Sarah followed in her mother's footsteps and became a teacher. Emmett and Vivian grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. They sat together on their porch in the evenings, watching sunsets and counting their blessings. They had grandchildren to dote on, memories to cherish, and the comfort of knowing they had made the right choice, even when it was the hardest choice. On a warm summer evening in 1910, when Emmett was 60 and Vivian was 53, they sat together on that same porch. Their hair was gray now, their faces lined with the years, but their eyes still held the same light they had when they first fell in love. "You ever regret it?" Vivian asked softly. "The scandal, the difficulty, the pain we caused. Not for a single moment," Emmett replied, taking her hand. "Every choice I made led me to you, to this life, to our family. How could I regret that? Sometimes I think about that day you saw me begging for medicine. What would have happened if you had just walked past, if you had not stopped to help? But I did stop. And you know why? Because something told me my life was about to change. Some instinct that said this was important, this woman and her daughter were important. And I was right. You saved us that day. You saved Victoria's life, and in a way, you saved mine too. You gave me permission to want more, to expect more, to believe I deserved to be truly happy. You saved me too. I was drifting before I met you, lost and searching for something I could not name. You gave me purpose, gave me a reason to stay in one place and build something lasting." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. From inside the house, they could hear their grandchildren playing, visiting for the summer. Sarah's voice called them to supper, and they rose slowly, their bodies stiffer than they once were, but their spirits still young. As they walked inside together, Emmett paused to kiss his wife's forehead. "I love you, Vivian Quincy. I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "And I love you, my dear husband. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I thank God every day for bringing you into my life." They joined their family for supper, the table crowded and noisy with love and laughter. This was what mattered. Not the scandal or the gossip or the difficult choices they had made, but this: family, love, the life they had built together from that first moment when he saw a woman begging for medicine and said, "I will get it. You go home and rest." That simple act of kindness had changed everything. It had set in motion a love story that overcame obstacles and scandal, that honored both duty and desire, that proved sometimes the right path is the hardest one to walk. As Emmett looked around the table at his wife, his children, his grandchildren, he knew every moment of struggle had been worth it. This was his legacy, this love, this family, this life built on the foundation of doing what was right even when it was difficult. The Wild West was taming around them. Cars were beginning to replace horses. Electricity was coming to even small towns like Evanston. The world was changing in ways they could never have imagined when they first met. But some things remained constant: love, family, the bonds that tied people together across time and distance. Emmett and Vivian lived many more years, seeing their grandchildren grow and start families of their own. When Emmett finally passed in 1920 at the age of 70, Vivian held his hand and whispered all the things they had said to each other over their years together. She followed him 2 years later, her heart simply unable to continue without its other half. They were buried side by side in the Evanston cemetery, their headstones simple but meaningful: beloved husband and wife, together always. Their children and grandchildren gathered to remember them, sharing stories of their love and devotion, of how they had overcome so much to be together. Victoria, now a grandmother herself, stood at their grave with tears in her eyes. "He saved my life when I was 6 years old," she told her grandchildren. "And he saved my mother's heart. He was the best father a girl could have asked for, even if he did not start out that way. And he loved my mother with everything he had, every single day of their lives together." She placed wildflowers on their grave, the same kind her mother had worn in her hair on her wedding day. "Thank you, Papa," she whispered. "Thank you for stopping that day, for helping us, for loving us. Thank you for showing me what real love looks like." The sun set over Evanston, Wyoming, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, just as it had that evening when Emmett proposed. The town had grown and changed, the Wild West now just a memory, but the legacy of one cowboy's kindness and the love it inspired lived on in the hearts of all who knew the story. And in the end, that was what mattered. Not the scandal or the difficulty or the unconventional path they had taken, but the love, always the love.